Hi, it's Eva. Today I took the topics I was going to do for my podcast, and I'm going to make a video about them simply because I'm going to be talking about the criminal justice system a lot, and since it's something that I have personal experience with, I want to really be a victim advocate. So I think it might be helpful for people who want direction in that area to see my sort of facial expressions or body language when I'm talking about it, because I don't think you can convey just by your voice the emotions that go with dealing with the justice system in America, because it's a very emotionally complicated experience, which I was utterly unprepared for, although I thought, since I'd had experience with it when I was in college, that I knew something about it. And I'd also taken, some criminology classes, or, watched a million legal dramas just like everybody else. And I thought, okay, I sort of know what's going on. I know what a DA is. I know what a prosecutor is. I know what a trial is, a plea deal. Like, I get it. But I had no comprehension of how much a person, the victim in the case, would have to work to advocate for themselves to get through it. Like, I did not understand that it's very biased because the courts are over full, and I've been a jail volunteer for the library for almost a decade, so I already knew that the incarceration rates in America are the highest in the world, and I already knew that all the jails were overcrowded, and that has a lot to do sometimes with how justice is served, simply because you can't sentence somebody if you have no place for them to go. So, you can sentence them and have them there temporarily, but there's just a very big push to sort of make space. It's almost like a hotel. Like, you got more guests coming. There's going to be a big college reunion, say it's a college town. All the hotels are going to be full. So there's this big push for space. Where are you going to get more rooms? And the only answer is, well, you simply have to rotate the people who are already in the hotel rooms out so you can get new ones in. As absurd as that is, it's relevant. So the book that I was going to do for my podcast is Defending Jacob. And it was a Apple TV series as well. I read the book, years before I saw the series. The series was really good. It had that guy who played Captain America as the father, who's the DA. But I'll get to that. And then I was gonna also cross-reference that with the book of Job. So in Defending Jacob, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it does have a lot to do with criminal justice and how guilt or shame, or actually probably the best word for it is responsibility, or taking accountability. That is the whole point of Defending Jacob. Defending Jacob is a book about a DA. I think they're on the East Coast, and his son is about 15 and walks to school every day, and he's an only child. So one day when his kid is, walk to school like he does 1,000 times, he gets called to a case, and it's in the park on the way to the school, and it's one of his classmates and actually one of the neighbor's children who's been murdered, who's the same age as Jacob and in his class, and his name is Ben, and he's been brutally murdered in the park. So the father, played by Chris Evans, is the DA in the case, and he starts to investigate it, until they find some evidence, I think it's either the DNA or the blood, something, where Ben has something on his clothing that is traced back to Jacob, which is the DA guy's son. So of course he's pulled off the case because he, can't try a case where his son is the proposed perpetrator. So Jacob, as nervous and scared as the father is, Jacob is kind of dull, blunted. He has blunted emotion. So he's scared, but kind of not in a normal reaction of scared. It's almost like you can see him, by the way they describe him in the book, like almost getting like a high or a buzz from the attention, and almost like he almost feeds off it. Whereas the parents are, of course, they can't go to the grocery store, they can't do anything because the whole town is basically has decided that he's guilty. And they get their house spray painted, like horrible curse words about the son being a murderer, and there's a funeral for Ben, and it's all very community driven. So it's a very insular feeling, like you almost feel kind of claustrophobic because it's such a small family. It's just the mom, the dad, and the son. And I wouldn't say that they spoil him or anything. It's just because I know this, because I was an only child. Okay, the only reason I was an only child is because my parents had mental illness, and my mom was actually told, don't have children. It's not a good idea, because she was a unmedicated paranoid schizophrenic, and she had me when she was 30. It was unplanned pregnancy, but she'd been with my father for a while. They met at Columbia University, where my dad was studying Latin. Well, whoops, the wind, haha. And so my mom was studying Egyptology, archaeology, I guess. Well, this isn't the best idea I ever had. All right. So Jacob, there's a lot of questions as, does Jacob have psychopathy or is he a sociopath? Starts to become like the question. And the reason this becomes the question is because of, how like everything's online now. They find on the internet, like his classmates turn him in basically because on the internet there's like a fiction writing, short story, sort of, I don't know what you want to call it. What do you kids call this? A blog? I don't know. But he has written anonymously, but of course it's leaked that it's his computer, it's him. Stories about sick violence, like almost like not per se sexual, but almost that same thing I said before about almost kind of like a strange sort of excitement or sort of a passionate obsession with violence. Like not what you would consider normal, like, okay, it's just getting into it because of video games or violent movies. So unfortunately for Jacob, he has written a whole story about, I don't know, he wrote a whole story about killing somebody with a knife, which that's how Ben died. So it's not very good timing. And so he gets called out for that. And I looked up, because I used to work at a psychiatric hospital as an assessor, and then I also spent a year at a psychiatric children's facility in Kentucky as an intern at basically working with, it was a lot of foster kids, but it was really children who had a lot of social issues or abandonment issues, actually would probably be the better word, and sex trafficking, sexual abuse. Not kids put in juvie, or if they had been reformed enough so that they could work on their psychological complexities. So I've had some experience with some of these terms, studying them in the DSM 10. All right, so sociopath is basically somebody who gets their predilection for harm against another from a social context. So that means usually that they were abused or severely neglected or influenced by usually multiple acts of danger against them, and they have built up this sort of sociopathic tendencies that goes through several stages. So it's more like a trauma response or something to do with having had somebody from the social context. Usually it's somebody like a family friend or a family member this has happened to. It's not as like, there's all this information about stranger danger, and I know when I was growing up we were told stuff, all these stories about like getting stolen out of like the grocery store, or just stuff, or like off your bicycle. But actually the instances where children are abused severely or sexually used for someone else's pleasures it's more than likely an inside job, and that's been proven like in multiple studies, either through police or missing organizations, or scientific evidence of numbers of the studies they've done. Okay, so a psychopath is a different animal. Psychopath, well, it's a person, but you know what I'm saying, it's just a term, is more somebody where, just think of socio as it's external, and then psycho, it's more internal. So a psychopath, it's more, they're either born, there's a big question, is there a gene for predilection to violence or sadism? Sadism being in like getting enjoyment from hurting other people, which is different than masochism, which is masochism's more like you cut your self cutting, or like you do something to yourself, self-destructive behavior, or self-sabotaging behavior. That's all masochism, because you're doing it to yourself. And sadism would be you get pleasure from harming others, not self. So a psychopath, it's more internal. It's more like either they're born, either through their DNA or genetics, or like I said, I like to use the word tendencies a lot, because I think a lot of people have like tendencies of a disorder, but they don't have the disorder. Like somebody can have narcissistic tendencies, which means they have some of the bullet points you would see like in a DSM of behavior that's narcissistic, but they don't have all of them where they would like get the diagnosis. Okay, you have to have like it's a list, and then you have to meet all these qualifications within a certain time period for like any disorder. Like they can't give you a disorder unless you follow this particular criteria, and it's usually on a time or symptom list. So a psychopath is more something it's from within. It's like whatever you're feeling from, it's coming from yourself. Like you have, and a lot of times they're the ones who will want to drown. I mean, not to gross you out, but an extreme example would be like, you know, animal abuse. They want to drown a kitten, or they want to shoot a squirrel and watch it, you know, like they won't put it out of its misery. They want to watch all of it like dying and suffering. That's like something they do before they move towards hurting people. Well, that's you know, some of the steps. Like none of this is like set in stone, and I am certainly do not have I'm not a psychiatrist. Someday I would like to be one, but I am not one today. I just have a social work MSW. And I've been in the field, you know, like doing multiple things for community service, which you can look at my resume or whatever. LinkedIn if you want to know about that. Anyway, just know that I have multiple experiences where I've gained firsthand knowledge of some of these issues, especially with addiction. And then also in my own personal life, which is in some of my videos with some family experiences, etc., etc. All right, back to the book. So this big question comes up. Oh, I didn't go over this. Okay, so somebody who's a psychopath or somebody who's a sociopath, they can have these particular stages in childhood. If you want to look back at a child and say, did they have, so like if they want to look back in Jacob's childhood, the only thing the mom can think of is when Jacob was young, like I think it's 5, you know, he had some episodes where he exploded in anger, where he was uncontrollable and vicious. So she starts to think like, she starts to go through all these, what do you call it? Photo albums, diaries, all kinds of memory lane type stuff where she is trying to figure out, is there something that she is missing? Is there some, because the mom more than anybody, more than the dad really is, she's like a dog with a bone. Like she is going to figure this out. And she feels like since she's the mother, he came out of her body, she would know best. You know, like almost instinctually whether he did this to Ben or whether he's being wrongly accused. So children usually who end up with these labels later in life, they'll have something called intermittent, which means sometimes, you know, in and out, you have it a little here, a little there. Intermittent explosive disorder, which is exactly what it sounds like. You have explosions of anger. They are uncontrolled. They come out of seemingly nowhere over something simple many times. And it's like whatever's happened and the reaction to it by the child, they don't match. So it could be something as simple as, you know, you don't get called on in class or something, you had your hand up just like everybody else. And instead of just being like, oh, well, okay, you can call on me maybe next time, the child will flip their desk and just rip up everything and start screaming. Okay, well, that's like a over-exaggerated expression compared to the event. It's not like they were, you know, cussed out in class by the teacher. It's like, which would be more like, okay, I'm screaming at you, you're screaming at me, I'm demeaning you, so, you know, tit for tat, I will demean you back. That's not what's happening. It's something minuscule that doesn't warrant that kind of behavior. And that's when you know psychologically there might be something not right. Not right's not the right word. Like, out of order. I like out of order. Because I never like to think of, well, I mean, I can think whatever I want, I guess, because nobody knows what other people are thinking, but I shouldn't verbally ever say, you know, make something mentally ill in a category of like bad or abnormal. It's not kosher. Okay, so intermittent explosive disorder, usually as the child ages, they might get something called, I know I'm going to get it wrong, it's DDMD. I don't know if I got that right. It's dismissive disorder, mood disorder, something. It's, I knew I would forget it when I had to do this video, but basically it's, I guess your mood is dismissive of what's really of reality, and so you're, I know I'm not explaining this one right, but it has to do, it's more like a mood disorder based on your inability to judge what's happening to you, like your perception of what's happening to you. So your mood is not congruent to reality. All right, so that happens, and then if you then move on into your teenage years, then you would, as you're possibly going to like 17, 18, up to 21, you would then have conduct disorder, which, oh, and antisocial tendencies or antisocial, I don't think it's a disorder, antisocial behavior. Okay, so I think that's pretty obvious what that is. So all that leads to conduct disorder, which is exactly what it sounds like. Your conduct is not, it's not appropriate for society. Okay, so many incarcerated people have been through severe trauma or brought up in really violent environments. That conduct disorder, I think the manifestation of that, and this is not out of a book, this is just out of my brain, the manifestation of that would be like, you don't, and I think I've talked about this before in terms of incarceration and crime. You're not thinking like, okay, I really want money because I gotta pay my rent and I'm behind because, you know, everything that's happening with the economy. How could I get fast money? Well, I could go rob a 7-Eleven. I don't know, do they even have 7-Elevens anymore? Anyway, I could go do that, and if I did that, I could get the money. Now, somebody with one of these disorders might first think of that, which is not something your average person would be thinking. They might be thinking, I need to get a second job, or, you know, I need to cut back doing entertainment, things I like, or going out to eat. Hold on 1 second, my alarm's going off. Okay. All right, so in terms of what I think of this disorder is like, you're only thinking, I could go to this gas station, I could have, you know, like a gun I have for protection, I could take that with me, and then I could get the money from whoever's at the cash register. Okay, but then you're not thinking, okay, so the chances of that working are X, Y, and Z, who knows, you know, based on your community or based on if you have a record or not, whatever, you know, your size, your how much you can cause people to do things for you that they don't want to do, you know, like how intimidating are you? Okay, all that stuff. Somebody with one of these disorders might only think that far. Okay, that's as far as they're thinking. They literally, and I mean this with everything, like they literally do not think, if I did that, I could possibly get arrested, get shot myself, something could be set up at the register where the drawer doesn't even open and I wouldn't even get the money. I would just get caught. Like, okay, they don't think that. It's like their thinking hits the wall and there's nothing after that. It's like A, B, nothing. No, like scenario 2, scenario 3 could happen, scenario 4, thinking through like, if I did this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I'm getting really ruining my life. I'm now in jail. Now I have jail fees, court fees. I lost my job now. Now I not only can pay rent, I'm gonna get evicted by the time I get back there. Okay, that doesn't enter your mind. Like, I'm serious, okay? Like, this doesn't happen. Okay, imagine if like, that's how you thought, like that was your thinking. You literally could only think, for whatever reasons, the first part, you don't think the second part. It's not something, and then there's other people who are like, almost like overthinkers. They're like, sometimes people have trauma responses where they feel guilty about everything, okay? Like they just feel like they're wrong, like no matter how much therapy they go through, no matter how much they work on themselves, no matter how much they get themselves out of bad environments, they still think I'm worthless, I'm unworthy of good things happening to me because, you know, I was raped or I was sodomized. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like a different thing. That's not like they're not thinking through all the steps. That's like they're stuck in it's almost like a Rubik's Cube that like they can't ever get to all the colors together. They're stuck in a web of thinking that they're always caught. They're never free. They're always going to get eaten by the spider. Like, in fact, they're sometimes wrapping themselves up in the web to wait for the spider, just to get it over with, right? They just want to get it over with. They know it's going to happen, and why not just do it to themselves in some level. So this is what these are, and the reason I bring up these theories, because in defending Jacob, we find out, yeah, what does this have to do with defending Jacob? It has to do with defending Jacob because they take him to a psychologist, they take him to, you know, have all this looked at by professionals, and then he has to go through court and, you know, everything, basically because it's an online digital society, like literally everything he ever did on the internet is scrutinized to the point where it's almost like they're coming up with stuff that's not even real because they have so much evidence, like possible evidence. It's not real, it's not court evidence, it's just like evidence society can use, the community can use, the school can use to convict him before he's actually convicted. And so we find out from the father that he's been hiding a secret from his family. He never told them something extraordinarily important, and what he didn't tell them is that his own father is in prison for murder for life, and that it's almost like his family history, he's kept it from his wife, he kept it from his child, he's never really told any friends, he's actually told nobody, and he separated himself, like he has excommunicated himself from his hometown, from his past, from anybody who knew him before. And if they did know him before, they would know the history of his family is almost like there's these family feuds that are all violent, where like people have actually killed each other within the families themselves over almost like bitterness over you know, family feuds or whatever gone awry. And they've also violently maimed or killed people unrelated to the family because of this rage they have inside. And it's like, it goes back generations, like great grandfather, blah, 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 his father's dad, you know, and it's on the male side. Okay, so So the dad comes up with this theory that this is his fault because he never told his wife. He never told, like maybe they shouldn't have conceived a child. Like maybe if he'd been honest, this wouldn't be happening. Ben would still be alive. And he goes on and on into this whole, like, it's almost like a black hole. And he ends up hiding evidence. He's a DA. He's not on the case, but he finds like the knife. No, not the knife. The sheath that the knife was held in Jacob's room. And he destroys it. I can't remember what he does too, but he destroys. So he destroys evidence. And then, I don't want to tell you, like, in case you read the book, like what actually happens, but a lot of the series, it's like 8 episodes, I think, was like frustrating in that, you're waiting to find out, like, did he or didn't he do this? Is Jacob guilty or not guilty? Or is he like a victim? And it's like the series doesn't want to tell. They just want to leave it up to you. And a couple of key scenes later, we find out that the grandfather who's in prison, he ends up making an order inside that affects people on the outside. I'm not going to say what it was, but he's able to do something, how like you can buy favors and while you're incarcerated or whatever to hurt people on the outside. He does something like that. And then the mom sort of decides he's guilty in her mind. And just because moms know everything, pretty much like the body language of their child like things their child says that maybe not everybody would pick up on. So she does an act that's it's kind of insane. Like, she does something that's completely, nobody foresees what she does, and it's shocking, and it endangers both her and Jacob, and it changes everybody's life. So, and then in the end, I like the book's ending a million times better. In the book, something else happens that's similar to the Natalie Holloway case, so in terms of the perpetrator, but I'm not going to say anything more than that. And my phone alarm's going off again. Okay. All right, well, I didn't get to Job, but I guess what I wanted to say about Job, I'll just make it brief, and maybe I'll make a separate video about Bible stories, and I'll do Job and the Lot's wife, because I wanted to do that anyway. But in reference to defending Jacob, I will just say Job is somebody who, it's clear to all of the readers that he's not guilty, right? It's completely, the story shows he is innocent. And basically we know he's innocent because God and the devil make a deal. It's almost like they make a gamble. Like, God says, this is my greatest servant, not my greatest, this is my most loyal, faithful servant. And then the devil says something like, oh yeah, I can turn them to, they're not going to be loyal anymore. Just let me get, my hands on them, and I will cause them to go against you. It's like not even that hard. And so by that deal being made, you know that Job's innocent, okay? Whereas like the story with Jacob, we don't know that as an audience. Like, that's kind of the cat and mouse game of the book. Like, we actually don't know if he is innocent or not. Whereas in the Bible story, we know. And then when all these things happen to Job, it's almost like the 12 plagues of Egypt, only they're on one man. And is he going to break or not is the story, not is he guilty or not. So I thought that was kind of an interesting contrast. I was supposed to talk about my own legal battle which happened actually during COVID and lockdown, and a little bit before, like 2019. The whole thing kind of dragged out for about, honestly, 3 years. So the worst part, the first two years, I'd say. So I will make a separate video about that, because this video is actually 5 minutes away from being as long as I'll make them. Okay, so I didn't mean to go on and on about, I guess it's because of all the psychological theories. They do take a long time to explain. So I'll have to do a separate one about that. Honestly, I was supposed to make it yesterday, but I had to spend some time alone with myself and process my own feelings about it, because when I was going through it and I had the brain injury, I had not finished rehab. I was still going through rehab, which was like a 2.5 year process. And I personally had so much anger and rage and strong feelings that when I used to tell this story about it, I couldn't do it without really being sort of like reliving it. Like, I couldn't be objective about it. If I could, in the way I told it, you could see, like, in my tone or the way I would raise my voice and get, heated, you could tell, like, okay, she has not worked through her feelings. Like, this is not healthy. So I had to, like, check in with myself and do some prayer, meditation, and reflecting, and make sure that I am now in a place. The last time I told it, I was in a very good place. And, like, my hope, one of my goals is I would like sometime to get some kind of training in the law, and I would like to be a victim advocate, because my victim advocate helped me tremendously. Fortunately, that is not a job that pays very much, but it's something that changes people's lives. So why am I telling you that? Because you certainly can't be a victim advocate for other people and listening to, like, gun violence that's happened to them, or these very terrible stories, where people's children have been actually killed or sexually molested. You can't help people unless you have worked through your own issues. But ironically, the people who tend to go in those fields, usually, I'm not going to say all times, but many times they've been victims of violence themselves, which is why they're willing to go into that field, because they want to make a difference. They're certainly not going in it for the pay. So I'll do a whole thing about that, because the last time I told it, I did it totally objectively, and I think I've gotten over that. But when I haven't told it in a while, I just have to check in with myself, because I still can't read or write like I used to. That's permanent. And seeing I'm a literature major, and, like, reading's my life. I'm somebody who really wanted to get more advanced education. This is a lifetime problem that I struggle with handling my feelings over. And I know that I can do audiobooks, and I know that I can do talk to text. Believe me, that's like what I do every day. I know that there are all these devices for free on my phone. Like, yes, I get it. The point is, I would like to be like you and choose to use those devices. I would like to choose to do that. I don't want to have no choice to do my favorite thing. I don't want to, like, let's say your favorite thing is not reading, which is probably most people. Let's say your favorite thing is fishing, and now you lost your right hand and you were right-handed. Okay. So fishing's going to be a problem, right? It's not going to be the same experience, huh? But everybody can go on and tell you about, this mechanical hand and blah, 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 and you can use this whatever, or, to me, it's like, okay, nobody who has these disabilities has probably not, one, thought of that, of what they can do in place of it. Okay, they've thought of it, right? Because every day this guy goes to brush his teeth and he doesn't have his dominant hand to do it. Okay, like he's thought of it. Okay, they've thought of it. Okay, they may not know what to do, but yeah, it's come across their mind. Okay, so the advice you're giving is not opening their eyes to something they don't already know. Okay, so what might be a better choice? See, I get mad. What might be a better choice is to say, that sucks. I would really hate that if that happened to me. Or like, listen, commiserate with them in that feeling. Don't change the topic and tell them how good life can be, okay? Because they're figuring that out for themselves, and they are highly more motivated than you are to figure that out, okay? So sit with their feelings that they're sharing with you. Most people are too awkward. They don't know what to say. They want to get out of that uncomfortable feeling, so they want to offer all this unsolicited advice about how to make it better. And it's like, maybe a different approach. All right, that's it. My alarm's going off again.